Hello and welcome back to Green Money Momentum, where we talk about market movements, making money, and money momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and we are here for yet another daily talk of stock. And today it was Friday the 13th, and we could see that when we look at the heat map, it was a spooky day overall. A lot of blood in the markets. Overall, a very bearish day. To be exact, 80% of plays were in the losing category. So overall, about everything is red here on the heat map except for energy. So energy did rise, but that isn't necessarily a positive for the whole economy. We'll get to that in a second. But the big news that did cause the sell-off today was the attack last night by Israel on Iran. And so before getting any more into the market news or anything like that, I just want to say, as a human being and someone who wishes for peace in the world, this makes me very, very sad. And I just wish the best for all the citizens that are in these places. And I just hope the best and safety for everybody in 2025 with all the advancements that we have had. It makes me very, very sad that these types of events are still happening in the world. I wish we lived in a world where war was not a thing. I think it's just absolutely awful that people are getting bombs literally dropped on their head. And so wishing the best for everybody, praying for everybody. But with that being said, of course, it was not a positive for the markets. This does cause some fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so a lot of stocks have fallen down today, but oil and energy rising. And so why this isn't a positive, of course, a big thing with the Trump administration and bringing down inflation is how the oil prices haven't been high, how they have been lower. But with this war going on, this is going to increase oil prices. This is going to increase prices at the pump and overall energy. And the markets, again, did have a big sell-off. When we look at the volatility index, the VIX, this is a good indicator to see kind of what market sentiment looks like and just overall volatility. And we could see a big spike from the news today. So the VIX going up 19% in the last 5 days, up 14% for the month. And then when we look at the fear and greed index, the markets still, despite the bad news from last night, still tried to have a rally back up today. It didn't quite make it there. Everything basically did finish in the red, but the markets did try to recover. So when we look at the major indexes of the triple Q and the SPY, we could see that both plays did start out bloody today and then did have a bit of a recovery through the day. And overall, when we do look at the charts on the long term, we do know that in the recent weeks and over the last month, we have started to see quite the recovery from the lows around April, but we have started to become a bit more overbought on the entire market. So when we just look at the major indexes, we could see on both the indexes that we are riding high on the relative strength index and also the MACD. So many concerned about the levels where we are currently at with the indexes. And then when we look at major economic news, we also do have big news coming next Wednesday. And so Jerome Powell will be speaking, and this will be all around the rate cut decision. So most likely there will not be a rate cut coming up, but the chances have gotten slightly better since this attack happened. So the other day, the chances were about 99%. We could see around 97%. So it has became a little bit more favorable for a possible rate cut, but most likely not, as there is a 97% chance of no cut. And so with that being said, I still do believe that the markets will continue to roar up. There will be some short-term fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I could see a bit more of bleeding coming up, some more red days in the market, but overall, I do have long-term faith, and I do believe that the markets will recover. And with that being said, we're going to talk about 3 different plays that I see having a lot of potential through the rest of this year. The first one is going to be BigBearAi. So that stock right there works a lot with security, and they are in a very interesting position right now. And then we're going to cover 2 quantum stocks. So we're going to be covering QBTS, DWave Quantum, and then we're also going to be covering QUBT. So stick around for that. And we're going to start out here with Big Bear, but of course, as always, not financial financial advice. Always do your own due diligence before making any financial decisions. With that being said, the Big Bear is sitting at a very interesting spot right now at $3.74. So a major level of resistance in the Big Bear. We do know that levels of support and resistance that sit in the Big Bear are right around 325, 350, 375. And then the levels of resistance that we're trying to get to is back to the $4 range. But the Big Bear has been struggling in the recent term. So we were in this upwards bullish trend in the Big Bear. And then most recently, we have started to consolidate sideways. And so what is interesting with the markets today is that Big Bear did show some strength despite finishing in the red. It was green there for a little bit today, but overall didn't drop off too much. So holding strong right around this level of 375, and we are just trading in this sideways channel. And what is really interesting about Big Bear and why I wanted to bring up Big Bear today is because with everything that is happening right now, with the war concerns and with a lot of trade being restricted from many countries, we do know there was recently a lot of travel bans. Well, Big Bear sits there with their technology in a very interesting spot because they do have a lot of real world utility. And we do talk about Big Bear a lot with the government. And well, what Big Bear does at a lot of these American airports is their Veriscan technology. And this is when they take a scan of your face. They know exactly who you are. And so for American citizens, this data just kind of passes through. But the main purpose behind this data is for international folks coming to the US. And this is a great way for the database to know who is coming in. And again, there's a lot of concerns about criminals and everything related to that with travel. So Big Bear being their technology is very, very useful during these times. And Big Bear recently has also gained a lot of government contracts, a lot with defense. So Big Bear could have a lot of utility coming up, especially with everything that is happening, because right now Iran is not happy about what is happening, and they have talked about retaliating against the United States. With Big Bear, another reason why we are so bullish on this stock is this company has been paying down a lot of their debt while gaining these government contracts, which have yet to show up in their earnings report. So with their last earnings report, they did have a kind of disappointing report, but they also did say that a lot of the revenue that they have earned from their recent contracts just hadn't hit the bank account yet. So something to look for in their next earnings report. And overall, when we do look here at their cash and debt, we could see that their total debt, their short-term and long-term debt, has been paid down quite a bit in the last quarter. So we could see that their assets are rising, their cash is rising. Oops, let's go back there, while their debt is being paid down. So very positive there. And then another very interesting thing about Big Bear is they have a ton of short interest. So there are a lot of shorts against the Big Bear right now, a lot of bears against the Big Bear, a lot of bulls against the with the Big Bear as well. So as we can see here on the volume chart, the volume has been rising, and we have really been fighting in these levels of support and resistance. So a lot of buying pressure for the Big Bear going both ways. And personally, I think all it's going to take is another big contract or a big catalyst for Big Bear to seriously really soar. With the next play that we're going to talk about, QBTS, we know that in the last month, they rose by more than 150%, and they had a significantly high short interest. So as the price continued to soar, the shorts were having to cover, causing even greater movements towards the upside. And Big Bear did have some big news recently. So there wasn't any numbers attached to this, but they are expanding globally, and they do have a new UAE partnership. So very interesting. Again, Big Bear has a lot of utility already with the United States and their face scan technology and everything they provide. So now Big Bear going global. So Big Bear overall, we are very bullish on this stock. And while we are sitting in this sideways channel, this could be seen as a spot for accumulation, because with the high short interest and everything that Big Bear does provide with their next earnings coming up right at the end of July, beginning of August, while consolidating, this could be a good opportunity to buy into the Big Bear, especially when we just look at the opportunity to the 52-week high, a more than 150% return just to get back to the 52-week high that was set earlier this year. So myself, I am very bullish on the Big Bear. I do have a lot of options contracts, and I do anticipate that there will be a pop coming up, especially with all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that is currently happening right now. It is not bad to hold some of your portfolio within the defense sector, which Big Bear is right there providing a lot when it comes to defense. So with that being said, now we're going to hop into quantum computing. We're going to start out with QBTS, which is DWave Quantum. And personally, this is my favorite quantum computing stock out there because of all the intrinsic value that they have. So a lot of the quantum computing stocks are still in the phases of research and development, but QBTS is already working with a lot of big companies, and recently there was the massive pop. So just like we were talking in Big Bear with the high short interest, DWave Quantum had a significantly high short interest last month, and then they came out with their very positive earnings report, which was massive. So let's revisit that. See, when we look at their first quarter, a massive quarter. So QBTS gaining a lot of value, and their bookings have gone up quite a bit. So with their last two earnings reports, especially the one for quarter four, they talked about how their bookings were up 500% year over year. So they had a good earnings report right around here. It did trail off with market conditions, and then recently that big pop. So they did have their earnings report where they reported great revenue, and then they also did announce some big advancements with one of their quantum computers. And so this stock soared to all-time highs, but in the recent couple weeks, there has been a bit of a sell-off. And just as I was saying, I expected it to ride right around this previous level of resistance. So earlier in the year, we did have this level of support and resistance, and it did pop up over that level of resistance, but was looking a bit overvalued on the relative strength index and the MACD. We have fallen a bit when it comes to the price movements, and also on the relative strength index and on the MACD as well. So I could see DWave Quantum continuing to hold around these levels if market conditions do stay a bit choppy, but don't get worse. If things do continue to sell off, and in the recent in the upcoming couple weeks, if we do see more fear, uncertainty, and doubt, I could see DWave Quantum and a lot of quantum stocks being hit from this because they are very volatile. And if that happens, I do believe that we could come back right down to around $11 to $12. Earlier in the year, we did have this middle level of support where we did, or this middle level of support and resistance. It acted more as a resistance, and we did trade there for quite a while before their quarter four earnings. And so with DWave, I do believe that the price movements coming up will be a bit more bearish. The relative strength index still needs to come back down a little bit, as well as the MACD. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did return to 11 to 12, but overall market sentiment does stay good. And if it does shake off the recent news and we continue to see more bullish momentum in the markets, I again wouldn't be surprised if it sat on these higher levels of resistance as well. And so myself, I am very bullish on QBTS. We have seen the volume fall off a bit in this stock too, so not as many investors as there was last month, but still sitting at a relatively high short interest. So QBTS sitting at a very interesting spot. Myself, I had my big investment into QBTS at this bottom level of support, and I did sell a good position here, but I still do hold some QBTS shares. But I will be personally very excited if we do fall back down to these levels in between what was previously this rising level of support and resistance, because if we get down to 11 or even below that, I will definitely load up on a bunch of options contracts for this stock. And that being said, we're going to hop into our next favorite quantum computing stock, QUBT. And so with QUBT, they did see a big rip up yesterday. The stock was up about 30%. So it was all the way up to around $20. It did fall off today with a lot of the market down to 1672. And so with that being said, myself, I am very bullish on QUBT. When we just look at the upside to the 52-week high, we could see that there is a 60% upside just to get to that 52-week high. And it is very possible that they could do that in the short term, because not only will personal investors still be investing into QUBT, but so will index investors as well, because at the end of this month, on June 30th, they are going to be joining on the Russell 2000 and 3000 indexes. So some big news for QUBT. And with that being said, also the the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Wong, he has actually became a bit more bullish on quantum. So he said that just the other day that quantum has reached an inflection point and quantum is becoming more useful, a very different take than he had earlier in the year in January, when all these quantum stocks were their highest, when Jensen Wong actually had some negative things to say. And he said that quantum was still a long way away. So he's changed his opinion there. And because of that, the overall quantum sector gaining a lot more momentum. And myself, I am very bullish on quantum. Let me tell you, do not fade the quantum stocks, because I am most excited about the quantum stocks in my portfolio. They have been where I have seen the greatest gains through this year. And just overall, when we look at disruptive technology and things that could really change our lives, quantum computers are right up there, being able to solve a lot of real world problems, and the ones and zeros being combined. It's just incredible what quantum can do. And when we just think about technology in general, we look at a lot of the tech stocks over the last 10 to 20 years, just look at what a lot of them have done when it comes to the price and return that they have had. Of course, the most notable being Apple. We've had others such as Microsoft, and just overall technology is one of those sectors that investors are always very excited about, and they do see a lot of momentum. And so myself, very bullish on QBTS and QUBT, but I did want to bring up this one thing about DWave Quantum. I almost forgot this here, and that is that DWave has entered an agreement to sell up to 400 million shares from time to time. So they did disclose last night that they have entered a sales agreement with Needham Evercore TD Securities. And so this is a little bit bearish, actually. So myself, I am very bullish on DWave Quantum, but I don't necessarily like to see this, because this could mean that there could be share dilution coming up. Being able to sell so many shares at 400 million and it coming from a time-to-time agreement. So this means that there could come dilution into DWave at any time. And so just something to think about when it comes to DWave Quantum. There has already been a lot of return on investment when it comes to the quantum sector. I believe that there still could be a lot more, but as investors, we do need to be aware that DWave could sell those shares at any time, or issue new shares to sell. DWave Quantum does also hold a strong cash position. So just something to be aware of as DWave investors. They haven't done any dilution yet, but with that agreement, they could do it at any time. And I don't say that again to be bearish, but to always let investors beware of what could possibly come. When it comes to the stock market, one thing I have really learned over the last decade that tends to sometimes be more important than everything else, because there's always a ton of excitement in the markets. The one really important thing is dilution, because with dilution, that could take away all the excitement from the investor, and it could just line the pockets of that company. I'm not saying that's happening with DWave, but if I see anything more about dilution, I will let investors know. Overall, when I do look at DWave Quantum, QUBT, and the overall quantum computing sector, I have a lot of excitement because of the intrinsic value and everything that these quantum computing companies are doing. And of course, I am also very bullish on the Big Bear. I am overall very sad about what has happened in the world, but of course, BigBearAi having all their face scan technology, they will be useful as the years come. So I would be curious to hear what everyone else thinks in the comment section below. So please drop a comment on if you're invested into BigBearAi or either of these quantum plays or anything else when it comes to defense, quantum, or just any stocks that you're very bullish on. I would love to hear from you. So please drop that comment, please leave a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Today, it was Friday, so this is the last day of the trading week. Go out there, enjoy your weekend, and I will see you in the next daily talk of stock.